Hello and welcome to episode 195 of the official EstabliskedRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Evan Silva. And today we have the man you know, the man you love, the man we love. It is Mike Leone. Mike, how's it going, buddy?
It's going good, in the best ball streets right now, dynasty stuff going around, which I know you're pumped about, the Dynasty Virgins content. So, it's a great time for fantasy football.
Yeah, Leone invited me to this virgin laden dynasty league last year, and I just show up, just win it. No big deal. Actually, I think I got second. I think Miko actually got first, but good cash.
Close enough.
Close enough. Anyways, Evan, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, it's good to, we've annually now at this point, we have internal friction between the football guys and the numbers guys. And it's good to every once in a while, and I emphasize every once in a while, bring the soulless spreadsheeters into the big leagues to mix it up. So, I hope, Leone, you've, as it started to warm up a little bit, you've been able to get outside and touch some grass and, feel like what it's like out there in the real world. But I'm ready to mix it up, man. Let's get after it.
For those guys watching on YouTube, I mean, Leone's skin is just translucent. I mean, he hasn't been outside in 6 months. Look at him.
I was going to ask Luke about my lighting. I got to switch it up. I look like a ghost every time I've got another light right in front of me, but it's too hot in my office to turn it on. Oh man, this is bad.
Dude, I already played a 3-set tennis match outside in 90 degree heat this morning. Look at my skin. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about a format that I think is getting more and more popular. We've had a bunch of questions about it for content about it. It is 2 quarterback and or Superflex formats. Our rankings for this format are up on the site. The goal in today's show will be to give a little bit more context on the strategy and talk about some quarterbacks we like for the 2 quarterback format. Guys we wouldn't normally talk about in a 1 quarterback format. Before we get into it, the Discord, yes, the Established Run Discord is popping. If you are a subscriber of any kind and you haven't logged into the Discord, and believe me, I know as a stone boomer, it can be overwhelming and hard to get into, but I can assure you, once you get in there, it's really easy. If you're a subscriber and you're not in the Discord, I think you're missing out on some value. Second of all, this podcast is indeed brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Best way to get ready for the season, in my opinion, is to be in the real money best ball streets. You can upload our rankings for the Underdog format and get a really good feel for how you and the market view players. All ETR Draft Kit subs get $10 to use on Underdog for free. If you're a new player on Underdog, you get $35 for free, aka a free draft kit. Okay, let's get into it here. First of all, Leone, I think a good place to start with this whole 2 QB format thing is how valuable are quarterbacks on a relative basis. In other words, in our normal half PPR rankings, our first quarterback checks in at 44th, 45th overall. But in 2 quarterback rankings, and I haven't checked them actually, I think we may have pushed an update. But as I looked at them over the last week, in our 2 quarterback rankings, we had seven in the first 17 spots. So how do you think about relative quarterback value in 2 quarterback formats?
Yeah, the scarcity just changes completely. When you're in a 1 quarterback league in a normal 12-team league, you've got some pretty high upside quarterbacks around QB 12, even going into QB 16. So that's already beyond your filled starting positions. And then if you think about it too, just draft strategy, it is very difficult to replace not taking a running back early. It's just hard to find those guys. Like even in the 7th, 8th round, some of these running backs, wide receivers, these guys are going to get dropped, stone dropped. Whereas at quarterback, there's guys on the waivers with starting jobs, and every quarterback too kind of has this decently high base level of points scored. Of course, Mahomes is going to outscore Baker Mayfield by quite a bit, but you don't have to worry about putting in a guy that might be a 0 like you do at some of the other positions. So that's why you can take him so late in 1 quarterback leagues, but it completely changes in 2 quarterback leagues where now you're going 24 deep. So now people are starting guys like the pure pocket passers, the Kirk Cousins of the world, who don't have a ton of upside. And if somebody goes down and people are carrying backup quarterbacks, you can't go to the wire and just throw somebody in. So the scarcity changes rather dramatically, which is what pushes up these quarterbacks from saying, hey, don't take one until at least round 6, maybe even later, to okay, there's some viable options you could even take in the first 2 rounds.
Well, let me ask you this then. If you get a top 3 pick, do you go CMC, Dalvin, Big Dog, Kamara? I mean, if you do that, I think that's fine, but you're missing out on a lot of quarterbacks. You're not even going to have a chance to take Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler, Lamar, Dak, Herbert, Wilson, like you're missing out on that whole thing. So I know our rankings have running backs going early. How do you feel about in practice taking running backs if you take a first four pick?
I like taking the running back still, getting that anchor running back. As I've looked at it, and I just did a startup dynasty draft too. That was super flex. Obviously it's different than redraft, but what I found is people are, I think, devaluing some of the mid-tier quarterbacks, especially the ones that have some rushing upside, and they're valuing the premier quarterbacks appropriately. So I do think Allen, Mahomes, they should go in the first round, but if I can get Jalen Hurts in the fourth, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, I think there's a big edge this year in planning in almost any format your drafts around some of these rookie quarterbacks with the rushing upside. So because I know I can get value on the mid-tier quarterbacks later, I'm okay passing on Mahomes or Allen, even though they're fine in a vacuum to take there. So I can lock down that running back that I know I really can't replace later.
I think even in the 2 quarterback leagues, those bell cow running backs that have a chance at 350 touches are still so rare. Such strong position scarcity and move the needle so much that they still belong to encompass the first half of the second round. I think it's worth emphasizing though that the depth of the position is exactly why, and Leone touched on this, but I think it's worth emphasizing. The depth of the position at quarterback is exactly why you can stream in 1 quarterback leagues. I mean, JJ Zachariason built an entire brand off that idea, and it's because the depth of the position at quarterback, and really it gets deeper every single year. And especially with NFL teams embracing the dual threat quarterbacks, because for a long time in the league, it was considered to be, you needed a drop back passer. It's eventually it's going to get third and 10, and you need a guy who can drop back and make the throws on 3rd and 10. Well, now teams are realizing, hey, we need to win on early down so we don't get to 3rd and 10. These dual threat quarterbacks can boost our running game. We're embracing them. You see, Justin Fields going at number 11. You see Trey Lance going at number 3 overall. These teams have really embraced quarterbacks that are not really thought of as traditional drop back passers. And we know how studly these guys have changed the game in fantasy too.
For sure. One more macro thing I want to talk about. In practice, when you do a 2 quarterback draft, there's going to be runs because people panic, right? Like they understand there's only 32 starting quarterbacks in the league. So it feels way more reactionary than a 1 quarterback draft. It's like, oh shit, there's only, XYZ guys, quarterbacks left. I better take one. And the next thing you know, you're using a 3rd round pick on Matt Ryan or Trevor Lawrence when you could have had Justin Jefferson or Keenan Allen. I mean, what do you think about that spot, Leone, where you're running out of quarterbacks to take? You can have this sick wide receiver or running back, but instead you're taking a quarterback just because you need playable options. Are you following what I'm saying in terms of position runs?
You need to have to do your best to be in touch with what your league's going to do. And there's always an advantage from having different values in the market, especially if you think you're marketing, you're valuing stuff appropriately and the market's not. But it's kind of one of those things where you reach a point, there's a diminishing point of returns where if you're so detached from the market, if you think they're undervaluing quarterbacks like crazy and you take Mahomes in some of the first 2 rounds and no one takes quarterbacks to round 6, you're drawing dead because everyone's got good quarterbacks and crushed you at the other positions. And then the opposite that you mentioned could happen too, where, you think they're overvaluing quarterbacks and then you get stuck and you have to start 2 quarterbacks, whether it's super flex or 2 quarterbacks, you have to start 2 because the base level of points of that position is so high. So I like to factor in ADP into some of our ranks. And I think that's really important in 2 quarterback leagues. We've got the sleeper ADP in our rankings, but nothing really can replace just understanding the league you play in. So if you played in leagues before, you can kind of know the pockets of the draft where the quarterbacks are going to go. If you look at auction values, I mentioned that dynasty league I just did, I got caught where the first few quarterbacks I had valued about what they went for. So I was like, okay, good. I'm on par with the market. And then I, took a couple quarterbacks and then there were some mid-tier guys I liked late that just went for so cheap. And I was just kicking myself because I already spent all this money and couldn't take another one. So you got to do your best to sort of feel out your league. And I know you don't want to be a lemming, but it's okay to jump in the middle of a run. Like I don't know if I want to be starting the run. I don't want to be at the end of the run. I'm okay being kind of in the middle and just grabbing my value based on, the guys I like most.
Where do you think exactly? So there's a cliff drop at these onesie positions, right? I mean, like at tight end, I think it's like maybe right in the range of the two Patriots tight ends, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. And then after that, it gets real ugly. And you pretty much don't want any part of those guys. At the quarterback position, I think it's similar. If you just want to bring up, your quarterback rankings, I mean, where do you think that cliff drop lies? Would it be, like you? Yeah, I think ideally you want to try to grab, like an elite to, I don't know, like a top 8 guy, and number 8 being like, let's say Jalen Hurts. Ideally, I think you want to grab a top 8 guy and then pair him with a guy that you think is a good value, maybe in the quarterback 12 through 24 range or something like that. But there is a cliff drop where you can get caught, and you don't want any part of these guys.
Yeah, I'm looking at your quarterback tiers. If I can get a tier 1 quarterback in round 2, I'm jumping on it. Maybe you can get Lamar or Dak there. I think there's a tier drop off, a pretty big clip drop off in upside after, like, you've got Burrow, Tannehill, the rookie quarterbacks. Maybe you could throw Stafford in there, maybe Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield. I'd probably keep them in there. And then I think there starts to be a drop off where like Tua's fringy, and then you're into Wentz, Cousins, kind of, once you get into pure pocket passers like Cousins and Derek Carr, things get a little shaky. And these guys have value in a 2 quarterback league, but yeah, ideally you at least want your first, prior to that. I'm probably QB 15. I probably want one of the top 15 QBs.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about some actual players here that we're probably not going to talk about much for the rest of the offseason, but in this specific format, I think it's at least worth mentioning. Evan, you said cliff drop. I agree with you. However, I do think these quarterbacks that I'm going to mention here are in play in this format. Nobody wants to hear it, man. You can get Daniel Jones. His ADP is QB 22 right now. I don't know where he goes in a 2 QB league exactly. Maybe the 8th, 9th round. I don't know. I don't have a great feel for it. I understand the offensive line is concerned. I understand Jason Garrett is concerned. This late in a 2 quarterback format, we can still get a rushing floor and ceiling out of Daniel Jones. 27 NFL games, Daniel Jones has rushed for 26 yards per game, 3 touchdowns. He had 3 games last year with 60 or more rushing yards. So when we say pure pocket passer, I don't think that necessarily applies to Daniel Jones. Now he brings back Saquon. Let's add in Kenny Galladay. Let's add in Kadarius Toney. Let's add in Kyle Rudolph. I mean, in a 2 QB format, if I were to say use a first round pick on a quarterback and then it gets to me in the 2nd and 3rd round and I have these outrageous wide receiver and running back options and I end up passing on quarterback there and then I can get Daniel Jones later, how bad do you think that is, Evan? And do you think Daniel Jones is even in play for 2 quarterback leagues?
I would rather hear Leone talk about this, honestly. I'm just going to kick this question to Leone. I'm just worried that Daniel Jones stinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anyone who's starting is, going to be viable in 2 quarterback leagues. As we mentioned, like there's not going to be people on the waivers. I do think there's a strategy in play where you grab one really high upside quarterback and then you take 3 quarterbacks total and you take a couple of these guys late. It lets you play matchups. If one of them busts, you've still got someone else to fill in. It lets you cover the bye weeks. And I think Daniel Jones is in that range. Like I'd much rather take a swing on Daniel Jones than I think Derek Carr. I think regressing Raiders offense, Carr's not going to run. Give me Daniel Jones, maybe even Zach Wilson. I think might have more rushing upside than people think, just given his athleticism. So these guys are in play. I know, you like Fitzmagic too, I believe, as one of your guys here. But I mean, just
I like Darnold too.
Yeah. So, So guys that I think you can throw flyers at in 2 quarterbacks, the ones that I picked out would be Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Those would be the 4 that it's like, and I like Leone's idea of ending up with 3 if you take one of those guys as your second one. But I think Zach Wilson's going to run.
If you're taking these guys, you have to have 3 guys. I mean, some of these guys, like job security starts to come in play. Like they could get benched if they play poorly enough.
Yeah. By the way, on Zach Wilson, just real quick, have you ever seen less hype around number 2 overall pick than Zach Wilson. Like, everybody just assumes he's just going to stone fail. I don't know what you think about him, Evan, or his spot, but like, I don't think he's just going to like fall on his face completely.
I don't think everyone assumes that he's going to stone fail.
Not Salfino and the Jets fans.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Salfino. Salfino. He is, I don't get that same impression.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's set up.
I think people are people should be optimistic about the Jets. I think that they've built pretty smartly under Joe Douglas. They've been aggressive, very aggressive, maybe in some cases too aggressive in addressing their offensive line. Really like the Elijah Moore pick, like the Denzel Mims pick last year. I like the Corey Davis pickup. You know, he was top 5 in yards per route run this past year, and he's still. I mean, he's a player that definitely started his career off slowly, but I mean, he was a top 5 pick in the draft. I think they've done a good job of building around Zach Wilson, and I'm optimistic about him.
Yeah. I mean, if Crowder stays, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, Chris Herndon, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, like, you know, that Becton, I think that they're set. I think Zach Wilson is set up reasonably, and people are going to be surprised, I think, at how much he can scramble around and make plays with his legs. The Darnold thing, I mean, here's what I'll say on Darnold. Teddy Bridgewater was quarterback 22 in fantasy points per game last year. That was without Christian McCaffrey. And now, you know, I think Darnold might actually be better from a raw talent perspective than Teddy Bridgewater. He gets Christian McCaffrey back, add in Terrace Marshall, bring in Dan Arnold. You just get away from Adam Gase. So I think that Sam Darnold can be a top 20 fantasy quarterback or somewhere around there.
The guy who I think everybody seems to be pessimistic about it, and I know we talk about him every show, but that's Tua.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, you know, and I'm going to put the Dolphins in my sneaky stacks article this year because you can get all these dudes so cheap. I mean, it's crazy how late Devontae Parker goes, I think. Tua is for essentially for free. Mike Gesicki goes really, really late in drafts. You know, Will Fuller, I mean, I'm probably too low on him. I've got him at wide receiver 41. His consensus ADP right now at Football Guys on FFPC is wide receiver 42. He's very, very cheap. Jalen Waddle isn't particularly expensive. Myles Gaskin, and I understand the hesitancy. He was the PPR RB8 per game last year when he was in there. Only played 10 games, but man, when he was in there, he was a usage monster, and they didn't bring in guys to really push him hard. So I like that. I don't know. I mean, I want to hear Leone on the Dolphins, I guess.
I'm with you on the Dolphins. I think people are being too hard on Tua. You know, he didn't have a normal offseason last year. He had a pretty significant injury that he was coming back from. I think he made some comments about not knowing the playbook as well as he should have, which is on him. But there are definitely reasons to think like we shouldn't be out on Tua yet. And if we're not out on Tua yet, a guy that was 5th overall pick, second quarterback in that draft, look at the weapons around him. You just went through them all. They're all at good prices. They're all pretty, I mean, Fuller and Waddle, like that's game-changing upside from those positions. And Miami's a team that has shown they will have, you know, a higher pass rate over expectation. I think if Tua, you know, if they take the kid gloves off and if Tua's ready for it, they could throw a lot more than people think.
Yeah. I actually, if your league mates, one of the huge edges in a 2QB format would be your league mates underrating Fields, Trey Lance, and Tua. That would be like the biggest edge in 2QB formats if you could get those guys in rounds 3 or 4. And one of the reasons we want to do this podcast was to just put context around 2QB rankings. You know, you cannot go straight off of the rankings in a 2QB format. You have to be aware of what your opponents are doing, maybe more than any other format. And so, yeah, Fields, Lance, and Tua to me would just be like just a dream to get as the QB2.
Well, Lance is already a guy that Leone and I have debated back and forth a little bit. And Leone thinks I have him way too low. And I totally understand why. Once he gets in there, he's going to be an absolute, I mean, he has a chance to like finish, like whenever he gets in, whether it's week 2 or I think their bye is like week 6 and then he gets in there in week 7. Like after that, all bets are off. He could be a top 5 quarterback the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan's system. He gets dropped in to like just an incredibly favorable quarterback-friendly situation where all he's got to do is get the ball into the hands of the playmakers. Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. That's the best run after catch trio in the entire league, and I'm not sure it's even particularly close. So
Yeah.
when he gets in there, he is going to be set up for success. The question is, and the reason that I have him low is because that same criteria apply to the guy that he needs to beat out. And Leone's argument is, hey, every single year these quarterbacks play earlier than everybody anticipates. And I mean, that is undeniable, right? But Garoppolo is going to be set up for success too. And if he gets off to a halfway decent start, I think that they're going to be compelled, and they're going to have a good team. Like, they're going to win games. Really, what it often takes for a quarterback change is like a team starts to lose games, and then it's like, all right, it's time.
The San Francisco 49ers have maybe the easiest schedule I've ever seen on paper.
Yeah, right. I know. If you look at the Warren Sharp SOS chart, it's like every team is kind of like this, and then all of a sudden the 49ers are way up here.
Yeah.
Like in terms of their SOS, like they have by far the easiest schedule in the NFL. I don't know. I mean, and then I want to talk about Joe Burrow after that.
This sleeper ADP in their 2 quarterback redraft leagues right now, Lance is QB 22. I mean, we could go back and forth on where Lance should be, but I think we both have his upside well worth his selection before that. And I mean, take Jimmy G in the last round. I'm not a big handcuff guy, but if you want to make sure you're filling all those weeks, Lance at a huge discount to where he would go if we knew he was starting, and then Jimmy G basically for free, you could probably get him near the last round. Again, unless your league mates just try to screw you over with that one. But, or maybe you can go Cam Newton or like some of these guys that might start and just fill weeks, just buy you time on Lance.
Yeah.
Herzig made a good point too, is that you don't necessarily need to draft Trey Lance in a 2 quarterback league, you're going to need him to be in there. But let's just talk about best ball. You don't necessarily, if you're taking another quarterback, with relatively decent draft capital anywhere within the first 10 or 11 rounds, you don't need Trey Lance. You can draft Trey Lance as your quarterback too, and you're probably not going to need him until like week 6. And by then, I think he'll be in there. Again, that's their bye, and I think he'll be in there no later than week 7. So you can draft him pretty late, and he can still be a big time asset. He could be almost like a league winner for you down the stretch, considering his upside.
Yeah, I know everyone wants to talk about Joe Burrow, who I think is definitely in play for 1 quarterback leagues. But last 2 quarterback guy I want to mention here, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't really know what to say here. How is he quarterback 32? Every time he's taken the field over the last 3 years, he's been in play for DFS. And obviously I'm mostly focused on DFS. Ryan Fitzpatrick is legit in play every time he starts in DFS over the last 3 years, and also as a streamer for season-long people. I mean, and you could also argue that nowhere that he's been the last few years has the pieces around him that he has now. McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, De'Ami Brown, Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas. I mean, they're so fast. So I don't really understand how Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback 32 at all. I think he would be priority for me in 2 quarterback leagues if he's really slipping to the 10th, 11th, 12th round. So that's the last one I'll say on the quote-unquote crappy 2 quarterback options that I like. Evan, go ahead on Burrow, though.
Yeah, so I think the numbers, just from a statistical projection standpoint, look really good on paper for Joe Burrow. For the entirety of the Cincinnati offense on paper, I think, because Zach Taylor is willing to play at a fast pace, because they're willing to throw the ball with extreme volume. But, then you have the things that you can't quantify. And this is why spreadsheets are ruining the game. They're ruining fantasy football. But Joe Burrow is coming off not just an ACL tear, but multi-knee ligament tear. Athleticism is such a big part of his game. The way that they went about addressing their offensive line, I think is kind of embarrassing. I mean, you have the worst offensive line in the league for a decade. And look, I love Jamar Chase. I think he's an absolute baller. But, passing on the chance to draft Penei Sewell, coming back in the 2nd round, drafting Jackson Carman, who, I'm not an offensive line expert, but everyone that I respect when it comes to offensive line analysis is this guy isn't very good. He's coming off, I think it was a back injury or something. And that's I guess they went and got Riley Reif. He's an over 30 guy. He's coming off a decent season, but there's a reason that an offensive line like Minnesota's let him go. And historically, he's been a much bigger name than game sort of offensive lineman. I mean, their offensive line isn't going to be good. He's coming off this brutal knee injury. So I don't know. I want to buy in. I really do want to buy in. But, man, I have these reasons for skepticism on him.
Yeah. We were going to do the full man versus machine debate on the next episode, and we'll continue to do that. But we can do this one-off man versus machine debate here, Leone, if you want to stand up for the soulless spreadsheets and the Bengals.
Adam is allowing us one early here. But I will say Evan's right that it's hard to quantify. I had the same issue with Dak Prescott. He's coming back from a really bad ankle injury. And if you bake in a 5% risk that like it goes to hell because these guys just aren't healthy, you're never going to get them in a draft. But at the same time, that risk does exist. So it's one of those things where it's easier if you're drafting multiple teams, you can kind of just keep your exposures in check. But if you're only drafting a few teams, kind of like a swing for the upside type of guy. I did ask Brandon Thorne about the Bengals O-line, and he said they're not going to be as bad as last year, but they're still going to be bottom 10. So it's definitely a concern. And there's this weird thing with the ADP where, Burrow's QB 9, and that's so rich, but I think his pass catchers are all undervalued. So I'm probably not taking Burrow unless I've taken a pass catcher early, which in 2 QB league, it'd be flipped. And as a result, I'm probably not taking Burrow in a 2 QB league. I think he's in the same tier or not that far ahead of, Tannehill, Brady, those types of guys that are going like, maybe even a round to 2 full rounds later.
Right. Okay. Save this man versus machine. On the next episode, we are going to go through some news, and then we will do some more man versus machine debates. I'm going to go ahead and chalk that first one up as a win for Silva. Leone wishy-washed his way out of any Joe Burrow takes. All right. Good luck in your 2 QB formats. For producer Luke. For Evan. For Leone. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.